Hello and welcome to this edition of Fulton Justice. I'm your host, Yolanda Lewis, District Court Administrator for the Atlanta Judicial Circuit. This program is dedicated to providing you with resources, information, and a closer look at how our justice system works for you. March is Women's History Month in the United States, and it is celebrated in many countries. In a proclamation recently released by President Obama's administration, the President states that this month we are reminded that even in America, freedom and justice have never come easily. Through grit and sacrifice of generations, American women and girls have gained greater opportunities and more representation than ever before. This month is an opportunity to highlight contributions and the transformative events where women have literally reshaped the course of history. Today's show will feature two dynamic female jurors from the Superior Court of Fulton County who will talk about their contributions to the bench and what Women's History Month means to them. Both judges have been willing to accept new challenges and are trailblazers in their personal and professional endeavors. Up next, we'll talk to the Honorable Gail Tusan, the newly elected Chief Judge of the Fulton County Superior Court. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Fulton Justice. Joining us now is the newly elected Chief Judge of the Fulton County Superior Court, Judge Gail S. Tusan. Welcome, Judge.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. I want to talk a little bit about your role as Chief Judge, but first of all, this month is Women's History Month, and I want to talk about a little bit about why that's important. Can you tell us why you think Women's History Month is important?
I think it's important because we have a lot of little girls in the world that need to know that they can work hard and aspire to be whatever and whomever they wish to be. And it's always helpful to have an image or a personality to kind of focus on so that you can learn from their example, maybe switch it up a little bit, do things a little differently than perhaps your mentor or your shero. But I think it's important for us to focus on the accomplishments, the many accomplishments that women have made over the last many years, both professionally, in the community, as well as leaders in their homes.
So tell us who inspires you.
Well, I'm going to pick two women, both who have spent time in Chicago. So that would be my mother, who grew up in Chicago and migrated out to California when she was 16. She's a school teacher, retired now, Energizer bunny, still very involved in her community, her church, her sorority, and I think I get a lot from her, as well as Michelle Obama. I think she's just incredibly awesome. I most admire her for her balance of her professional role. Despite her legal training and professional experiences, she places home and her family first, and I admire that.
So, speaking of history, you are engaging and embarking on a pretty historic journey yourself. You just recently been elected as the new Chief Judge for Superior Court. So tell us a little bit about your new role.
Well, it's a very interesting role. Judges, for the most part, are focused on their caseload and the individuals that come before them each and every day, trying to make sure that you're listening attentively, applying the law correctly, and making the best decision that you can for those individuals. So as Chief Judge, it's a completely different hat to wear. There's a lot of administrative responsibilities, a lot of policy implementation on behalf of the court, my colleagues, and a lot of community engagement in terms of the other stakeholders and partners that we interact with on a daily basis to be a court.
Absolutely. So I know that each Chief Judge brings their own set of goals that they want to get accomplished during their term. So tell us a little bit about what's your focus for the next term.
Well, I would say there are three primary areas that I would like to lead the court further in. One would be access to justice. That is something that I've always been very interested in, and over the last several years became especially interested in it from the perspective of our constituents and the individuals that come in and out of the courthouse every day. Atlanta is becoming more and more diverse. I grew up in Southern California, so I'm used to diversity, and Atlanta is beginning to catch up in terms of the different ethnic and racial groups that are here, and many individuals that were not born in the United States. And so from my perspective, it's very interesting when individuals, especially those that are not native to our country, have to access our legal system to help remedy many of the same things that everyone else does, that we as a court system have to make sure that we are culturally competent, that we are making justice accessible to them in ways that they can understand, both in terms of language and in terms of just our cultural norms. So that's an interesting piece. I'm also interested in seeing if we might be able as a court to be a leader with others in the community in the area of mental health. We have often focused on the mentally ill in terms of our criminal defendants, making sure that they're competent to stand trial, etc. But there are a lot of issues that impact those that are suffering from mental illness in the other areas, civil and domestic. And I think as a community, we could probably better serve this part of the community if we have resources that are identified and available. So I'm hoping to work on that.
And you have one more strategy that you wanted to...
The third strategy is basically how to increase the presence of the court as a collective body in the community. So we on the Superior Court have 20 elected judges, and we're all involved in whatever is dear to our hearts, and we're all out in the community. But I think the community needs to better understand what we do as a court, that it's not just about sending people to prison, that we are concerned about the quality of life and helping people to resolve issues that they encounter. And I think the best way for the community to feel like we are their court is for us to actually be in the community and involved in many of their activities collectively.
That's a very important role. So you're a judge now. Tell us a little bit about how you came to the bench. Did you always know you wanted to be a jurist, or is it something that developed over time in your career?
Well, I was fortunate to have parents that were public servants. So I've mentioned that my mother was an educator and my father was in law enforcement. And so, no, I didn't always want to be a judge. At one point, I wanted to be a high school counselor. At another point, I wanted to be a child psychologist.
So it's okay to change your mind.
Yes, absolutely. But at some point in college, I began to focus on the legal career. And so after going to law school and practicing law with a corporate law firm and then having a smaller community-based law practice, it was probably in the mid-'80s when I realized, you know, I think I might be able to make the most difference on the bench. And in the mid-'80s was the time when we were beginning to focus on the lack of diversity of the bench in terms of women and minorities. And by the early 90s, we had a governor at that point, it was Governor Zell Miller, who did a whole lot on behalf, certainly, of women and minorities to try to make the bench more reflective of the community that we serve.
So talk about history. Part of your journey has been pretty historic, would you say?
Well, perhaps, perhaps. You don't think of yourself as making history. You just are kind of focused on what you're passionate about. And I'm passionate about trying to help people, try to set a good example. And I guess if you inspire a few along the way, that's good.
So let's talk a little bit about beyond the bench in your personal time. I know that you do a lot of community service. Tell us a little bit about things that are important to you and that you're involved in off the bench.
Well, I love interacting with young people. I think as a young working professional mother, I made a concerted decision that if I was going to serve on a lot of boards, I wanted them to at least be organizations that focused on children. And I've continued with that. And so what I get a lot of fulfillment out of is actually getting out of the courthouse, rolling up the sleeves, and mentoring. And so I read to some third graders at Perkerson Elementary School. And my Links chapter is very involved at the Woolfolk Boys and Girls Club. We've started a gardening group, a reading group, a hip hop group. We're trying to get the kids active because obesity is such an issue with our young children, and we're trying to inspire them to stay with reading and the other skills that they need to be successful. But I think it's important, and I mentioned Mrs. Obama, I think it is important, especially for women, working women, to have some outlets for the stress of balancing all of the balls. And so I have some personal creative activities that I enjoy. I founded a dance troupe when I turned 50.
A great dance troupe, by the way.
You'll have to join us. It's called Always Wanted to Dance, because I always wanted to dance. Instead, I took piano lessons for many years, so I didn't dance growing up. And then my other main passion is writing. And I think that absolutely gives me an opportunity to maybe rewrite some of the conclusions of the cases that I see. So I'm working on the sequel to my novel, which was released a few years ago.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking time to be with us today, and thank you for all that you do for the court. And it was pretty nice to learn some things about you off the bench as well. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
When we return, we'll speak with Fulton County Superior Court Judge Kelly Lee. Stay tuned. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we have been celebrating Women's History Month by introducing you to female jurors who are making a difference on and off the bench. Now welcome Fulton County Superior Court Judge Kelly Lee. Judge, welcome.
Thank you, Londa.
Well, let's talk a little bit. We've been celebrating Women's History Month, which I think is a very important month. Tell us why this month is important to you.
Well, I think this month is important because it helps us to reflect on all the people that came before us.
Absolutely.
We have so many opportunities in our society now as women, and hopefully more in the future. But we would not have them but for the people that came before us. And we've seen so much just in the past 50 years. It's been really amazing how far women have come in every type of industry you can imagine. And so it's good to reflect on that and to inspire people in the next generations to come, and to encourage us who may have some authority and roles right now to really try to be positive influences on people who come behind us.
Absolutely. So you have a very big job, but tell us who inspires you.
Oh, I have so many people who inspire me every day, but that's a really good question coming from you because you know her well, Cindy Wright.
Oh, absolutely.
You worked with her hand in hand so much as our prior Superior Court Chief Judge, and she was the first person to really help me give voice to a desire to become a Superior Court Judge.
Oh, wow.
I had thought about it, hadn't even put it into my own words or expressed it to anyone until she suggested to me that she thought I'd be really good in this role. So she's definitely someone who always comes to mind.
Yeah, I second that because she's great. So let's talk a little bit about your role on the Superior Court bench. Tell us how you know, when you came on the bench and what your role is every day.
I came on the bench after winning an open seat on the 2010 November ballot. There were 5 of us who ran for Judge Westmoreland's seat when he retired.
Race.
What's that?
Large race.
It was a large race, and fortunately I won. So that was November of 2010, and I took office January 1st, 2011. And ever since I took office, I have had a standard complex docket which is a load of civil cases with criminal felony cases in addition to that. And that's the division in which I've served ever since being elected. Then I've got the new drug court responsibilities on top of that now.
So let's talk a little bit about drug court, because you know, it is very unique, and it's something that you're not paid to do, any extra money to do. And we've talked a lot about drug court on this show. Tell us how important this new role is for you.
Well, for me, it's really important. I have found just in the past 2 months that I've been serving how much I really enjoy it. You see so much that may be negative, or you see harsh things in the criminal arena in my role. You see bad things happen to victims. You see defendants who face a lot of time in jail, a lot of negative consequences you see. Absolutely. Drug court is really a bright spot in all of that for me, because you really do see people who turn their lives around in many instances. It is a win-win all the way around. It saves taxpayers dollars. It gets people out of the revolving door of our jails, which we know are overcrowded. Absolutely. And it costs a lot less to operate our drug court program than it does to house somebody in our jails. So I just see the benefit of it. I see it daily in the faces of our drug court participants. So it's very rewarding for me personally to serve on this court.
Now, I know you mentioned having to see a lot of people who lives may be really hanging in the balance. But talk about a moment that was, you know, beyond drug court, that was a bright and shining star for you, of something that was memorable during your time on the bench.
Well, the one thing that comes to my mind was actually a drug court experience. I have only been serving as the new drug court for 2 months now. I started in February, but I operate a calendar every week to every 2 weeks. And I can recall one of my first calendars, so I've had probably about 5 or 6 calendars that I've operated so far. An individual coming before me and me conversing with this participant, and I was just concerned that this is somebody that I don't think we're going to reach with our program, meaning he's either in too much of a denial over his addiction or doesn't want the help, and you've got to have those things to be successful in the program. Fortunately, 2 weeks later, he was before me again. He was a completely different person. How he even appeared before me was completely different. He was tailored, he had self-respect, and there was something that occurred in him over the past 2 weeks in the drug court program that really helped him turn a corner. So that is just, maybe it's because it's recently in my past experience, but that's something that was just very profound and really makes the work I do so rewarding.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about your role beyond the bench. I know that many judges are involved in community activities. They have personal things that are important to them. So talk a little bit about, you know, your service off the bench.
Absolutely. I am a member of Buckhead Church, and it's just an amazing church. They promote themselves as a church for unchurched people, which I love. And they have a very simple mission of growing a relationship with Jesus Christ. And a lot of my service is through my church. I co-lead Starting Point, which is a great program that is offered at our church that really just facilitates a real open, conversant atmosphere for people who may not be Christian or don't know where they are in their faith, but they are put at ease in a round table type of environment such as this, comparable to this. It's like a living room environment to put them at ease and really ask the tough questions and let them know it's okay to have doubts about faith and ask the really tough questions, be it about creation or whatever. So I do that once a week. So I really enjoy spending my time doing that.
So one of the things we talk about is that people typically, at some point in their lives, determine what they want to do in life. So did you always know that you wanted to be a jurist? Or when, I know Judge Wright was very critical in that, but you were a lawyer.
Right.
So talk about that path. I mean, did you intend to just be the lawyer of Atlanta, or were there bigger goals beyond judgeship before that was placed?
Not really. It evolved for
Yeah.
me very much so. I didn't even know for sure I wanted to be a lawyer in college, so that
Right.
evolved. I've kind of taken life as it's come a lot of the time, but it served me well so far. But
Yeah.
I was a practicing lawyer for a number of years. I always did litigation. I tried a number of cases, many in our state and superior courts in the metro Atlanta area, a lot in Fulton. And the more you appear before judges, or at least for me, and tried cases before judges, the more I wondered what it might be like. The older I got, the more I really came to learn my strengths and know myself better. I came to realize that I thought I'd be able to serve well in this role. And I also, in my experiences in Fulton County, saw the need for somebody with my background, my business litigation, civil litigation experience on our bench. That plus a little inspiration by people like Judge Wright is what ultimately got me here.
And why is it so important that people get to know the court system so much better than they usually do? You know, most of the time you watch the TV shows that always show the court system really in a confrontational type posture. But why is it important to know, for citizens to know, that the courts are really here to help?
Because that is the last place where justice can really be served is in our court system. I loved how Judge Tusan talked about increasing access to our justice system. That's so important. You shouldn't be limited by your resources as to whether or not you can have a dispute resolved or a conflict resolved in our system. So it's of utmost importance. We are there to make it accessible to people and to rule objectively and fairly, and we have to be a bit transparent and have easy access to accomplish those goals.
Absolutely. So what advice would you give to the young lady who's aspiring to be a judge or be in the legal system? Young males as well, but since it's Women's History
Month.
Month.
We'll focus on that. Well, just never take no. Don't think you can't do it. Seek out mentors. There are a lot of women who, like Judge Tusan, like Judge Wright, who serve in our community and are great mentors. And we love helping younger people. It keeps us excited about what we do every day. If you have interest in litigating or potentially being a judge one day, working for a judge, even volunteering time over a summer, you learn so much about the system that way. So I would recommend that as well. Keep up those contacts. As we all know, so much depends on contacts. So no matter what your interest may be, a male mentor, a female mentor, people in sororities, people in fraternities, keep up those contacts. You never know how you may be able to help somebody or they may be able to help you down the line.
Absolutely. Great information. Thank you for being here. This was really great to have a conversation with you.
Thanks a lot.
When we return, we'll have our closing thoughts. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Today we welcome two distinguished women who have served our justice system admirably. Chief Judge Gail Tusan and Judge Kelly Lee both honor the historic contributions of women each day by sharing their time and talents in the pursuit of a fair and just judicial system. They are an inspiration to us all. Before we close, I would like to invite you to participate in a special edition of Fulton Justice. We will host a show called Ask the Court and want you to participate by sharing your questions for consideration. You, our viewers, can email, mail, or call the court and submit questions to be answered by members of the justice system. We will read your questions here on the show and have candid responses from elected and appointed officials here in Fulton County. Please include with your questions your first name and the area in Fulton County where you reside. Of course, if you prefer not to send your name, your questions may still be selected. All questions must be received by May 30th, 2014. You may email, call, or mail us by using the information listed on the screen. Thank you to our guests for joining us today, and thank you for tuning in. Hopefully we'll hear from you soon. I'll see you next time.